Here we are in Season 12 of Pokemon Unite, and these are the best solo carry Pokemon in the game. Come along with me, Jake, your resident content cowboy here, yeehaw, as we take a look at all of the best solo carry Pokemon in the game right now and why they are the best, as well as builds and strategies for each one of them. It's gonna be fun. I promise. When you think of solo carry Pokemon, you probably do think of Speedsters a lot of the time, and we just had Leafeon release inside the game, so I think what better place to start than with the Speedster battle type for Unite, and what better Pokemon to start with than our first solo carry, Leafeon. Leafeon is the true definition of a speedster in my opinion. Insanely high burst, gets very good very fast, clears wild Pokemon extremely well, but also is very squishy and can get itself in some really bad situations if you don't know how to play it well. The build that everyone loves is Razor Leaf Leaf Blade, and there are a few reasons for it. The outplay potential is amazing. You can set up some really cool combos with it, and whether you're running Razor Leaf or not, Leaf Blade just seems like such an incredible move. The damage is so amazingly high and the dash is incredible. I actually think Solar Blade is a lot better than its win rate currently shows. Right now, the Razor Leaf Leaf Blade combo has over a 51% win rate, while Solar Blade has a 45% win rate. And I've got to say, I think people might just be playing this build wrong. However, Razor Leaf Leaf Blade, the way to go. There are a few ways to build this Pokemon, but an item that I just can't get enough of is Energy Amplifier on Leafeon. Your Unite move is on an insanely low cooldown, and you just use it to burst down any squishy Pokemon, even some tankier ones, on the opposing team. After that, there are a lot of good choices. Things like Attack Weight and even Eos Cookie work pretty well for stacking on this Pokemon. It has relatively low health, so the extra health you get from a cookie can be nice. However, Razor Claw just feels like such a natural item for this build that it's really hard to drop. And also, if you don't love stacking, I would highly recommend you try out a Float Stone in place of an Attack Weight. This Pokemon is already fast, and this just makes it an absolute speed demon. One of my favorite tips for Leafeon is to clear your center extremely fast and run to either the top or bottom path. The way you can do this is KO the Xatu and then run to the red buff right away. If you KO the Xatu at 9 minutes 45 seconds and then take the red buff, you will evolve, you will be level 4, and you can walk into top path before your enemies even understand that a jungler could be there. It's such a sneaky way to pick up early KOs. From there, you just continue to snowball the match, dive on their squishier carries. I'm looking at you, Decidueye, and try to pick up as many of those KOs as you can. For emblems, I would recommend Brown White. 6 brown, 6 white is just such an amazing combination after the Ho-Oh emblem change, so I don't really think there are many attack type Pokemon that you would run much else on. You also can play this Pokemon with cooldown reduction, which I do from time to time as well. That would be 7 black, 4 brown. The next top solo carry Pokemon on our list is Zoroark. I mean, it's hard to overstate how good this Pokemon is right now. I think most people would say this is the best speedster in the game currently. However, I think our speedster category is pretty stacked, at least the ones we have on this list. I think Zoroark mechanically is one of the most difficult Pokemon inside the game, but once you get the hang of what this Pokemon is doing, it is absolutely devastating. Its level 5 is amazing, and it actually works pretty well in path early. It can take down wild Pokemon fast enough that even though you're not super powerful until you hit that level spike, you still can hang inside of lane pretty well. Both Zoroark movesets seem to be getting a lot of play right now, whether you like Feint Attack Shadow Claw or Night Slash Cut, or kind of a variation of any of those moves. Zoroark is winning a ton. Both of its builds having over a 50% win rate is pretty huge, with Cut Night Slash having a 52.38% as of the recording of this video. I'm going to talk about Feint Attack Shadow Claw because there is something bugged with the Night Slash moveset, and I don't know at what point they're going to fix that, and then possibly that win rate could drop. Either way though, whichever Zoroark build you like to play, go for it because they are incredibly good. For the Feint Attack build, we've seen players double stacking, which is an attack weight, an Eos cookie, and something like a weakness policy. You just get a ton of damage out of this build, and the Eos cookie gives you the kind of survivability you need to make sure that you can do 1 or 2 combos on the enemy. Really, everything with Zoroark is about learning your combo. Whether it's the Night Slash build or the Feint build, you just have to learn how to make that combo work. I would highly recommend spend time in practice mode, really get the hang of it, play some standard matches, because this is a very tough Pokemon to learn at first. Again though, once you get it, I mean, get ready to dominate. For emblems, once again, I would recommend brown-white. You're going to see a lot of that with a lot of attack-based Pokemon. It's just too good of a setup to pass up. I also do like black-brown on a Pokemon like this. You have some natural cooldown reduction already as Zoroark, 20% at level 9, so this just leans more heavily into that. However, white-brown is just so incredibly good. It combos so well. Yeah, it's hard to do another boost emblem setup with a ton of these attack Pokemon. One little trick that is great to master is Zoroark's Illusion. So not only do you need to figure out the combo, but Zoroark's Illusion not only will transform you into, looking like an enemy Pokemon or Rayquaza at times, it also gives you an invulnerability moment there. So if you time it right, you can tank something like Mew's boosted attack or really any single strike move inside the game just by using your Illusion. High-level Zoroark players have this mastered, and it lets them get out of some incredibly tough situations. And we can't leave the Speedster category before we talk about everyone's favorite 3 different hatted friend, Dodrio. One of my absolute favorite Pokemon that they have ever put into Pokemon Unite. I think they nailed this one so perfectly, it's like a chef kissing their fingers. Since release, Dodrio has been an amazing solo carry, and it really feels like almost the definition of a solo Pokemon. Whether you're running Tri-Attack or Drill Peck, both builds have over a 50% win rate with the top players, and I think both have a lot of options. Tri-Attack Agility feels more like a single target assassin build where you will end up harassing the enemy central area a lot. This is great against enemy central area players who play Gardevoir, Delphox, things like that. And then the Jump Kick Drill Peck build, while also amazing and can kind of do that job as well, seems to be better for some of the larger team fights in the game. For Dodrio, it's hard to not want to double stack on this Pokemon. Just like our other Speedsters, the extra survivability of the Eos cookie is pretty amazing. The attack weight feels like a must because you want to do as much damage as quickly as possible. Your third item, Razor Claw, for sure. Whether you're running Tri-Attack and then you hit with the big boosted, or you use Drill Peck, Jump Kick, you are still getting in there and then using a basic attack after all your moves. It also helps with clearing wild Pokemon. It's really hard to suggest other items, but if you would like, here are a few that I do enjoy. I think a Score Shield is actually a decent call on this Pokemon. You're very fast, you're all over the map, you can make some very, very tricky plays, and a Float Stone is very, very good on this Pokemon as well. If you'd like to lean into cooldown reduction, you could also play Energy Amplifier. I feel like Energy Amplifier works a little bit better on the Drill Peck build because it feels like you're using your big Unite move and then you run in with the most powerful Drill Peck possible. One interesting interaction is how Eos Cookie interacts with the Tri-Attack build. Dodrio's Tri-Attack actually has a heal mechanic built in that is based off of Dodrio's max HP, which is why Eos Cookie combos so well with the Tri-Attack build. After you use Tri-Attack, your next attack will heal you based off 7% max HP. Eos Cookie just gives you more max HP. It's a really perfect combo for the bird. For Dodrio's boost emblems, the more things change, the more they stay the same. White-brown or black-brown for this Pokemon. I think it's a no-brainer. One thing to note is watch out for an emblem set that takes away from this Pokemon's move speed because it could mess with your sprint gauge a little bit. So don't have any move speed lowering emblems for Dodrio. For our next battle type in Pokemon Unite, let's talk about Defenders. This would be a class that you wouldn't often consider to have huge solo carry potential, but as of late, the Defender class has just been so incredibly stacked with Pokemon that are not only tanky, but they do an insane amount of damage, and we're gonna start off with a bang, Umbreon. Umbreon, without question, is just insane. It's unbelievable. Ding! That's trademarked. Don't use that. If you use that, I will sue you. I will sue you. Umbreon's Foul Play Snarl build is insane. If you want to see a video of it, there are a couple up on my channel. The Tank Disruptor build, I call it. It is just nuts. Its win rate, I think, is the highest single Pokemon build win rate in the entire game. Foul Play is insane. Snarl is nuts. Let's get into why. So we'll start with Foul Play. You get this move at level 4, like the other Eevees, it evolves at 4, and it's just so incredibly powerful. It does decent damage, it slows enemies, it moves them around, and at the same time, the second hit of it has damage based off of the target from the first hit's attack. I know that sounded like a lot, but basically the first charge of Foul Play, if it hits multiple Pokemon, it takes the one with the highest attack stat and it uses that to decide the damage of the next hit of Foul Play. This is why you can see this Pokemon deal so much damage to enemies if you dive in on something with a huge attack stat like a Zoroark and then you dash in once again, you do crazy huge damage. Not only that, at level 10, the plus move of this gives you a boosted attack after you use this every single dash. Your boosted attack heals you a considerable amount. It gives you a 12% missing HP heal. That's why Umbreon not only does insane damage, but lasts forever. Let's face it, this thing is insane right now. Not only that, you can pair that with Snarl that lowers your opponent's attack and special attack stat. It lowers their movement speed, it gives them a stun, and it grants you a 15% max HP shield. I think without question, both Foul Play and Snarl could be toned down a little bit, but while they are not toned down, it's time to win some games with Umbreon. For me, the build is Eos Cookie, Focus Band, EXP Share. There are a few different ways to do this, but here's my thought process. The Eos Cookie gives you more max HP, which combos with just about every single thing you do, specifically Snarl and, of course, your boosted attacks. Your Focus Band will kick in long engagements, and you will just continue to heal off of all of your moves, and at the same time, you will be saved from some unfortunate situations that could happen. It just turns you into this un-KOable monster. Your third item, EXP Share, I think is a bit of a no-brainer for Umbreon, and I wish more players would start to play it, because you really don't need experience for this Pokemon to be great. All you need is level 4, and then after that, you can pretty much do anything inside the game. So having EXP Share on just lets your allies get more and more powerful, because you really don't even need to go beyond level 12 for this Pokemon to essentially reach max potential. The emblem setup I have on right now for Umbreon is a little bit of a math chord creation. 6 white, 6 brown, 2 blue with some negative critical hit rate, but you don't critically hit on this Pokemon, so it's all gravy. Who knew a defender could carry like Umbreon? It's just, honestly, bananas. And its Unite move, steals shields. You just use it after your opponent uses a Unite, you take everything. It's just, Umbreon, what a Pokemon right now. Moving on to our next defender. That defender is Lapras. Lapras was released not too long ago in Pokemon Unite, and even though it's received a couple nerfs, this is still one of the best defenders inside the game. One thing that this Pokemon has that not a lot of Pokemon do is it is a single evolution Pokemon. You never need to worry about getting level gated, which is amazing. There are actually a few Lapras builds that are doing pretty well right now. Water Pulse Bubble Beam has been the standard for a long time, but after some nerfs, I've seen more players experiment with Perish Song, even Water Pulse Ice Beam, and I think there are a lot of different ways that you can play this Pokemon. It still feels like Water Pulse Bubble Beam is probably the most consistent build for Lapras. However, there are a lot of options, and all of them can take advantage of some of the builds we're going to talk about. First, I think a few things to notice about this Pokemon that will help you play it a lot better. Water Pulse gives you a boosted attack after every single use of it. Make sure you're chaining your boosteds correctly, because your boosted attacks will heal Lapras a ton. And then also, Bubble Beam is not only used to disrupt opponents, but it gives you a big time shield. If you happen to be running Ice Beam, just remember that you can use Ice Beam to actually increase your movement speed a little bit, and it's always a great move to throw into an area where you know combat will happen because it can stun your opponents. Perish Song is a little trickier. At level 11, it gives you a boosted attack after you use it, which is amazing. The plus move for this is incredible, but before that, you don't get the boosted, which is why I think Water Pulse often outscales this move a little bit, and Water Pulse has a lower cooldown. But Perish Song, of course, also does that big time quote-unquote execute damage if you hit an opponent with 3 Perish Songs. If you do hit them with all 3 Perish Songs, they take additional damage equal to getting hit by 1 additional Perish Song, and if they're below 10% of their max HP, sometimes you can pick up a big time KO. It's not an instant KO, but a lot of times it is. A huge thing to notice with Lapras's Unite move is if you do not manually stop the Unite move, you will not release a massive wave on your opponents. You'll just crash into something, and you also get a smaller shield. So with Lapras, it's really important to start to understand how your Unite move works so you can get maximum value out of it. My personal favorite build is Slick Spoon, Focus Band, and Special Attack Specs. I love stacking on this Pokemon, but of course you could drop those Special Attack Specs for something like a Shell Bell, a Muscle Band, or an EXP share if you would like to buff your allies. There are a few really good emblem setups for this Pokemon. Currently, my favorite is a combination of green, black. You get a little bit of white, a little bit of purple, and it has a huge focus on move speed. It has base move speed for this Pokemon. I really, really like a setup like that. I think what we're going to show right now is a Speedion. This is just green, black with a ton of additional move speed. The base move speed helps you chase down your opponents. Another very good setup for this Pokemon is 6 green, 6 white, 3 black. This is a Math Cord emblem setup, and I think it's really, really powerful. Obviously, you are a big, tanky monster, and this leans right into that. I think we'll have a couple honorable mentions for the Defender class, but we can't leave the solo carry Defender class without talking about Slowbro. Even though this feels like a tank through and through, this Pokemon carries super hard. And if you're looking to play the build that carries the hardest, does the most damage, and picks up the most KOs, that would be Scald. However, Surf is also so good on this Pokemon, especially Surf Plus. Shout out to Doob Snacks, he absolutely loves this build. The carry build for this Pokemon is Scald Amnesia. You could run Scald Telekinesis if you really like that combination, but Amnesia just gives you so much survivability in some of these fights that it's really hard to pass up. If you're looking to carry, I think a Focus Band is still kind of necessary just because you're such a massive tank and it lets you sustain forever. After that, you can lean into damage. Slick Spoon, Choice Specs, Special Attack Specs, they are all very, very good on this Pokemon. If you'd be looking to support your team more, you could run an EXP share, and that would be very valuable. But if you're looking to carry hard, you do want to lean into getting a ton of special attack for Slowbro. An emblem setup for this Pokemon is, without question, green, white. This thing just has so much health. It just does so well with having all of this survivability. I think this is amazing. You could run a cooldown build for sure. You could do 7 black, 6 green if you want, but I think the extra HP you get out of this is just so amazing. The real trick with Slowbro is winning early and continuing to lean on that advantage. Water Gun has one of the best secures inside of Pokemon Unite, especially when you pair it with Choice Specs for that extra pop of damage. You can just get last hits on every single thing inside your lane, hit your level 4, and then become extremely aggressive with Scald. Something to notice with Surf or Scald is how it restores your Oblivious HP. So you'll start to notice that your HP is getting restored when you are hitting your opponents, and that is because when you hit them with Scald or you hit them with Surf, you recover 10% of your Oblivious HP. This happens 3 times with your stream of Scald or your 3 waves with Surf. There isn't a ton to say about Slowbro that hasn't already been said. One of the premier defenders inside the game, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Also, its Unite move is a game changer, probably the most valuable Unite move inside of Pokemon Unite. You can use it to absolutely shut down one of the most important Pokemon on the enemy team and set them up for an easy KO. Before we leave the defenders, it's hard not to mention an amazing Pokemon like Greedent or Rapid Spin Water Spout Blastoise for carry potential. Also, Trevenant's still doing incredibly well. The defender category is just stacked, stacked, stacked right now. Now onto our supporters, and these supporters support the team by KOing everyone on the enemy team. I feel like it's impossible not to start with Eldegoss, the Murder Goss. This Pokemon is just so incredibly good as a supporter and as a kind of carry that's amazing. It has to evolve only one time. It has amazing attack speed, it slows your enemies, and all of its moves are good. While Leaf Tornado does feel pretty solid, Pollen Puff feels like the right choice for its first move. After that, however, either Cotton Guard or Cotton Spore are both incredible. If you're looking to carry a little harder, I think you're going to find it in Cotton Spore. Cotton Spore sets up an area around Eldegoss that explodes after 2 seconds. Once it explodes, it throws enemies into the air, it deals damage, it slows them. It's just really, really powerful. And then if you get its upgrade at level 13, you get a 40% increase to defense and special defense while that move is channeling. Also, a cool interaction to notice is you can actually have this move finish faster if you use your Unite move. It cancels it right away, and then boom, you get that burst of damage. One of the most powerful things about Eldegoss is its attack speed and what its attacks and boosteds do to your opponents. I think Muscle Band, Rapid Fire Scarf, and EXP Share is about the perfect build for this Pokemon. You can drop EXP Share if you don't actually want to sort of be handicapped a little on experience, so you can hit your level 13, but these items just work so well for you and so well for your team. The really amazing thing about Eldegoss's boosted and basic attacks is not only will Muscle Band chip a little extra HP off of your enemies and wild Pokemon, you also attach a bit of cotton fluff to the enemy for 3 seconds, and that lets you or your allies' auto attacks deal increased damage and decrease enemy move speed. This is why you see Eldegosses getting so many KOs early in lane. If you want to lean into the most attack speed possible, you're going to want to run an emblem setup like 7 red, 4 white. This is a very, very specific setup. You would still be running Muscle Band and Rapid Fire Scarf. You would just get the most attack speed possible out of this Pokemon. I also haven't talked much about battle items in this video because at this point I really think they're mostly personal preference, but I think X Attack is an amazing battle item for Eldegoss. It just sets up situations where you attack so incredibly fast, do a ton of damage. I feel like Eldegoss is always getting so many unexpected KOs on opponents with something like this. Now onto our next carry supporter, and that is Hoopa. Hoopa and Eldegoss have a very similar item setup that I think is fantastic. I think EXP Share, Muscle Band, Rapid Fire Scarf once again are insane on this Pokemon. You can drop one of them and run something like a Focus Band if you would like, but I just really think the auto attacks that these two do are so hard to pass up this combination on. This setup with the red 7 emblem setup that we talked about earlier for Eldegoss also gives you super crazy fast attack speed at level 4, and then even a higher increase to attack speed at level 11. I don't think there's a super wrong way to play Hoopa, but it feels like Hyperspace Hole Phantom Force definitely is the build right now. Ever since Phantom Force got a huge buff and you can now use it on any location on the map, you can really set up some insane plays with this Pokemon, and it's hard not to want to use it. It's just so incredibly good. It moves your opponents, it does damage, it repositions Hoopa. You can use it in combination with your Hyperspace Hole to teleport back incredibly fast or juke opponents. It's just so good. And then of course with Hoopa, you have to realize how important and valuable its Unite move is. You can use it aggressively, you can even use it somewhat defensively, where if your team has gotten KO'd at the Rayquaza fight, you can wait a moment before using your Hoopa Unite move so that you have it set up in time for your allies to come right back into the fight after they respawn. I think Hoopa's Unite move, paired with the fact that Hyperspace Hole and Phantom Force got buffs, is what makes this Pokemon just so good right now. And while all of the supporters are actually pretty good in their own way, I don't think we could talk about carry supports without talking about the old menace, Mr. Mime. If you've been with Unite for a little while, you know that Mr. Mime has fallen on hard times since it was one of the most overpowered Pokemon inside of the game a little while back, but it's still an incredible carry Pokemon in its own right. Now that the interaction between Confusion and Power Swap has been somewhat nerfed, I would say the build would either be Confusion Barrier or Psychic Power Swap. However, there's still a ton of carry potential in Confusion Power Swap. It's just it feels like the game specifically took the teeth out of that build on purpose because let's face it, it was nuts. If you're looking to carry with this Pokemon, you need to lean into its special attack. You need to pick up a Slick Spoon, you need to pick up special attack specs, maybe even choice specs to get that extra pop of damage. We're talking about carrying right here, and this is the way to do it with Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime has pretty solid HP, so for boost emblems, you still could run something like green-white on this Pokemon, but green-black is also a very, very reasonable combination. Did I say combination? It's just a good combination. A few things to notice with this Pokemon. First, if you're running the Power Swap build, the healing on it does scale a bit based off of your special attack, so stacking up special attack specs can be very, very valuable. Also, if you do leash one of your allies with this, not only are you healing them, but you're also increasing the amount of damage that they deal to opponents. I did this with a Tyranitar recently on my Road to Masters series, I think 1 or 2 seasons ago, and it was just such a beautiful combination. Oh my gosh, it was mean. Confusion deals an insane amount of damage, so if you're looking to carry, you're often going to be running this move. You also get it at level 4, which just feels so incredibly mean because you will have it for those 850 birds and you're going to do a ton of damage. You should notice that Confusion does more damage when you knock opponents into a wall than when you hit them if they are lassoed with your Power Swap. So if you're running Power Swap, you can actually just position yourself around walls and not Power Swap with an enemy if you would like. Or if you're running Barrier, you can set up barriers to push opponents into and deal a ton of damage. I mean, it just deletes some opponents. It's also good to notice that Mr. Mime's Unite move is actually really, really powerful, not only because of the damage it's doing, but because it stuns enemies when you jump into them. This can be extremely useful in some of the later fights in the game. Honestly, all of the supports are great. I think the Draining Kiss Clefable build is a carry in its own right as well. Not only that, just all the supports have a solid win rate because having a support on your team is very, very good. There are so many attackers in Pokemon Unite that I want to leave that category for last because there's a lot to get into there. But let's talk about the biggest solo carry all-rounders for Season 12. Let's start by talking a Pokemon that just skyrocketed up the win rate charts because of its buffs, and that is Dragonite. Welcome back to the meta, buddy. Whether you're running Outrage or Hyper Beam, Dragonite is doing so well right now with the recent buffs. Dragon Dance seems to be the combination that works for both of these best, but there's definitely something to be said about Extreme Speed Outrage. I personally love that build. If you haven't played Dragonite yet, you need to understand the combination between Dragon Dance and Hyper Beam. Charging up your Hyper Beam using Dragon Dance is the most important thing to understand with this Pokemon if you are playing this build. And the Hyper Beam Dragon Dance build is the most popular and highest win rate by an actually pretty big margin. Every time you use Dragon Dance, you increase your move speed, you increase your attack speed, you increase your attack stat, and you increase Hyper Beam's level by 1. Hitting enemies with auto attacks reduces the cooldown of Dragon Dance, so you can use it again and again. You are fully stacked at 3 stacks of Dragon Dance, and you will see this near the bottom of your map. You also can see it in sort of the look of Hyper Beam at the bottom of your screen. It starts out looking like kind of a normal hyper-ish beam, and then by the end it's all glowy and beautiful, and that's when you know that you have a fully stacked Hyper Beam. Now, not only does this stack your Hyper Beam, but all of your auto attacks are just doing insane damage while this is happening. Something to notice also with Hyper Beam is, of course, the higher stage of it does increased damage, but it also does increased max HP % damage, and this is why you see it secure big objectives and big KOs. At stage 3 against enemy Pokemon, it does 20% max HP damage, and against wild Pokemon, it does up to 2400 max HP damage. That's so much. There are a few good builds for Dragon Dance Hyper Beam. You could go Muscle Band, Rapid Fire Scarf, Scope Lens. You could use a Razor Claw. The reason you would want to use a Razor Claw is because you are getting procs on it all the time with your Dragon Dances. You could also use a Focus Band. There are just a lot of good options for this Pokemon right now. I personally love having a Scope Lens on this Pokemon. It has a pretty good natural critical hit rate at 20%, and its auto attacks deal so much damage. For the Outrage build, it feels like you could sneak in a weakness policy, and some people have even been known to use a Drain Crown on this Pokemon. I know, it's crazy but true. For Dragonite, 6 white, 6 brown emblems for sure. Just make sure to stay away from anything that lowers its critical hit rate and lowers its attack. For the Hyper Beam build, many people like to run a full heal on this Pokemon. That way, when you're in a big fight and you're getting ready to set up a big Secure on Rayquaza or one of the Reggies, you can make sure that you full heal and they can't stun you out of using your Hyper Beam. There's also a cool little interaction with your Unite move where you can cast it into an area and you can actually move it with eject button. I think this is a really fun way to play this Pokemon, and it actually will get you to hit opponents with your Unite move. It's one of the most difficult to land Unite moves in the game because it's so incredibly telegraphed, and this does solve that problem a little bit. There are truly so many good all-rounders that it's hard to whittle this list down to just 3, but this one kind of checks off 2 at the same time, and that's Urshifu. Without question, Urshifu is still one of the most dominant Pokemon in Pokemon Unite. Whether you go single or Rapid Strike, both builds are amazing for different reasons. Both have a very high win rate. Urshifu is just nuts, and it really depends on your individual playstyle. For the Rapid Strike style, you're one of the most devastating level 5 Pokemon, if not the most devastating level 5 Pokemon inside of Pokemon Unite right now. You can dive enemies on their goal zone all the way to their tier 2 goal zone, and you really are unpunished for it because of how much damage you do and how much recovery you are able to obtain using Surging Strikes. It's also something to note that every single time you hit with a boosted attack, you are lowering the cooldown of your moves with Urshifu if you're using this build. So Surging Strikes and Liquidation both get lowered every time you are hitting one of those boosteds. So you want to make sure you're chaining your attacks constantly. I really love leaning into critical hits for this build, so Razor Claw, Scope Lens, and something like an attack weight or weakness policy I think is very, very strong. And with that, I would stack some critical hit emblems, 6 brown, 4 white, with as much crit as you can possibly get. Now for the single strike build, I think it's really great to have an attack weight on this. All of your single strike massive damage from Wicked Blow is a critical hit, so every point of attack is kind of worth double. Razor Claw, also very good for this setup. I like Float Stone on this as well. Muscle Band, Focus Band, all incredibly good. And for a battle item, I really think if you can get the hang of it, an eject button's extremely good. You can use an eject button to reposition your Wicked Blow in ways you wouldn't expect. In fact, you can throw a Wicked Blow one way, eject button the way you actually want it to go, and you will punch a different way. You can pick up some crazy KOs using this. For that single strike build, just make sure you save a Wicked Blow for that final Secure. You reduce damage you receive by 40% when you're charging the move. You're unstoppable. It's just crazy. So if you save a little Wicked Blow for that final hit on something, you'll get it every single time. And it wouldn't be an all-rounder category without Zacian. Yes, Zacian is still incredibly good, even though it has been nerfed multiple times, bringing it down from the loftiest of S+++++ tiers, just down into the S tier or something like that. It's still one of the best Pokemon inside of Pokemon Unite, even if you get a lot of side-eye when you play it. I personally like playing Metal Claw the few times I have played Zacian, but Sacred Sword is still the build with the highest win rate. Something to notice with Zacian is now that its Intrepid Sword has been nerfed, it actually takes more energy to use your passive ability, and you need to be able to juggle your passive ability very, very well if you want to win with this Pokemon. And if you're not sure what Intrepid Sword is, that is the ability that essentially lets you power up one of your basic moves, or even your Unite move, using stored Eos energy, and that's how you see people cast Sacred Sword twice, or use Agility and get a shield, things like that. For this Pokemon's build, I just like leaning into its critical hit. It gets natural critical hit at level 2. And I know what you're thinking, why would it get natural hit at level 2? And the answer to that question is yes. Scope Lens, Razor Claw, and then you can't really do anything about that rusted sword, but who cares? For emblems, we're gonna do this really cool new emblem setup, 6 white, 6 brown. Have you ever heard of it? It's brand new and I haven't mentioned it before a single time. There really isn't a ton to say about Zacian that you probably don't already know if you've been playing Pokemon Unite. Yes, it is worse now, and yes, it is still incredibly good. But we're not gonna leave the all-rounders just yet before I at least mention my absolute favorite all-rounder this season, and that's Azumarill. I love the change to Azumarill. I'm having so much fun with this Pokemon. Aqua Tail, Water Pulse. Water Pulse Plus is actually more important to me than my wife and daughter. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is the case. The build for Azumarill, attack weight, weakness policy, scope lens. Trust me, trust me. It's just so good. And you might be wondering why Scope Lens, all of its attacks critically hit. They all do. This gives you additional damage when you do critically hit, which is kind of all the time. And at the same time, you get additional damage with your Aqua Tail. It's just so amazing. Oh, something interesting to point out with the Azumarill. You actually can run an emblem setup that gives you negative critical hit rate because it's irrelevant. You critically hit if you're only hitting one target regardless. So you can use an emblem setup like the math chords 6 brown, 6 white, 2 blue. Even though there's negative critical hit on it, makes no difference. And now finally we move on to our attackers. There are so many attacker Pokemon, so many good carry attackers inside the game right now. And as a role in general, this is a role that is filled with Pokemon that carry matches. That's why you see all 4 of your allies pick them every single game. There are truly so many places I could start with the attackers, but let's start with what feels like has risen to prominence most intensely, and those are our special attackers. I'm going to start with a recent addition to Pokemon Unite, Chandelure. Overheat Imprison is the top win rate build, even though I do think Overheat Poltergeist has a lot of outplay potential depending on the opposing team comp. I think the thing that makes Chandelure so powerful with Overheat is its ability to continue to move around the battlefield as you throw them, and then the final hit deals so much damage and can essentially track anywhere on the map as long as you have your opponent in the radius of it just for a brief moment. Also, everything this Pokemon does gives the opponents a burn tick, so they're constantly burning and doing small amounts of damage. As opponents leave a battle, they are often getting KO'd just by that continuous burn damage. It's just so good. And now, of course, its other 2 moves are also really exciting. I think Poltergeist combos extremely well with this move. It feels like it's almost set up to play well with this move. It sets up an area where opponents can take some damage by running into floating furniture and also slows them. This is great for breaking opponents' passives, by the way. Things like Duraludon and some of the Eevees have passives that need to get broken, essentially, with some sort of crowd control, and this sets up an opportunity to do that. But most players are running Imprison. And most players are running Imprison for good reason, because this creates a zone where people cannot use their moves, which is just amazing. Sometimes a team fight all comes down to something like this just landing in the perfect way, and that's why I think this is without question the most popular second choice for this Pokemon. It just works so well. You get it at level 7 and you can set up some amazing situations with it. Not only that, Chandelure's Unite move is really interesting because it can get canceled. It does do a lot of damage, but I actually think the real reason this Unite move is so good is just because of the blind effect that it puts on your opponents. You really can set up a lot of situations where enemies don't know exactly what to do inside of a fight or around securing an objective because they can't see what's going on. Again, even outside of the damage this can do with the beam, the blind is just so incredibly useful. The build I like to run is Choice Specs, Slick Spoon, Wise Glasses. This is a pretty easy setup for this Pokemon. You could cycle in things like a Shell Bell, get a little extra cooldown, get some healing, or you could cycle in something like an Energy Amplifier so you get your Unite move faster and also deal more damage with it, which is pretty good because your Unite move is pretty crazy. For emblems, this is simple. 6 green, 7 black. I like running the 6 green, 7 black with increased move speed on pretty much all of my special attackers right now, but there are also other good setups using Lugia for a white-green combination where you could have 6 green, 7 black, 2 white. The reason you see so many special attackers inside the game right now is because of the item Slick Spoon. Slick Spoon ignores 20% of enemy special defense with your special attack damage. It's just so good, and it's the reason special attackers are amazing, and it's the reason we're going to talk about our next solo carry in the special attack category, Alolan Ninetales. You have no idea how happy I am to see Alolan Ninetales as a meta pick inside the game. The Avalanche Blizzard build is incredible right now, and it is because of Slick Spoon. You're going to see the same kind of items on this Pokemon: Wise Glasses, Choice Specs, and a Slick Spoon. I've seen some people run a Focus Band, some people run an Energy Amplifier, all reasonable choices, but that Slick Spoon is the biggest difference maker, and a couple of its moves got some buffs, so that's very nice as well. The combination of Avalanche and Blizzard is really incredible because once Blizzard hits a wall, and this is true of any wall by the way, not just the Avalanche wall that you create this area effect that deals damage to opponents, slows them, freezes them. It's just so powerful. You can use this without Avalanche, and you can use this in a combination with Avalanche. There are a few ways to nail this combo. If an enemy is close to you in reasonable range, the fastest way to hit this is to go Blizzard into Avalanche. Sometimes opponents are a little too far away, or you want to block them off before they can escape. In those situations, I would use Avalanche first. Either way you use this combo, it's going to do the same amount of damage. It all depends on which you like to throw and what range your opponent is at. It's a little easier to go Blizzard into Avalanche, but at the same time, there's some weird auto-targeting sometimes on Avalanche that will make it a little tricky to throw at your opponents. You just want to get used to that combination. And then after you catch your opponents in Blizzard Avalanche, you want to hit them with your Unite move. You have a very high likelihood of dealing damage to them while they are frozen, which deals more damage than you would have otherwise. Almost 1,000 more damage if you hit them while they're frozen. It's a little tough to get the timing on it, but once you start to understand it, you end up KOing multiple enemies on the enemy team, and now your Unite move has a lower cooldown, so you can use it more often inside of a match. The emblems for Alolan Ninetales: green, black, for sure. There's so many good special attackers like Mew and Delphox, but let's move on to some others in the attack category. I want to talk about our ADCs, or attack damage carries. These are Pokemon that use their basic attacks to do a bulk of their damage at range. We're talking about things like Cinderace, Greninja, and the two that we're going to be highlighting here, Dragapult and Duraludon. Let's start with Dragapult. Dragapult is an interesting attack damage carry because it has always had a very high win rate, even higher than the other Pokemon, even though it feels like it doesn't get as much love as things like Cinderace and Greninja do. The current top win rate build for this Pokemon is going to be Dragon Dance, Dragon Breath. Dragon does a ton of damage and lets you reposition incredibly well in some of these big fights. Your items are Muscle Band, Scope Lens, Rapid Fire Scarf. There's really nothing else that you should be running on a Pokemon like this. It just gives you attack speed, extra attack damage. You get all of your damage basically from your basics and your Unite move, so there really isn't much else you need to run on this Pokemon. For emblems, you're going to be running a special build that no one's ever talked about: 6 white, 6 brown. There are also times that I like running 6 brown critical hit on this Pokemon. It's just fun to get critical hits. And I should mention, this Pokemon has critical hit rate of 30% at level 9, so leaning into that's just kind of cool because you're critting all the time. Both Phantom Force and Dragon Dance have a reset mechanic based on KOing an enemy. So if you KO an enemy, you actually reset both of these moves, and it just lets you chain insane KOs on the enemy team. Something I think a lot of people don't fully take advantage of is the Unite move Dreep and Destroy. It's on an extremely low cooldown, and the secure on it is incredible. You can use it very well to secure objectives and secure KOs on the enemy team, and as soon as you secure a KO on an enemy, boom, your cooldown is reset on your move, and then you can Dragon Dance right into the enemies again, or use it to reposition yourself. It really is how this Pokemon succeeds. A lot of times if an enemy is low, don't be afraid, fire off that Unite move so that you can reset your other moves. And while we're talking about ADCs, again, Cinderace, Greninja, amazing, but Duraludon has the highest win rate all the time, and there's a reason for that, and that is secure. Duraludon secures objectives, and securing objectives is one of the most important things inside of Pokemon Unite. Dragon Pulse and Dragon Tail are just insane. Not only is their secure amazing, Duraludon also has the highest attack stat of any attacker inside of Pokemon Unite. And that is why when you see it get critical hits, it's doing like 8,000 damage every time it hits you. Once again, the build is Dragon Pulse, Dragon Tail. You use Dragon Tail to reposition yourself, knock up opponents. Pulse secures enemy KOs and objectives, and then the items: Muscle Band, Scope Lens, Rapid Fire Scarf. I don't think there's really anything else you should be running on this Pokemon. You could run something like a Focus Band if you really wanted to get that survivability, but your job is KOing enemies. You survive by making sure that they don't. Emblem loadout: 6 brown, 6 white, or 6 brown critical hit. And before I leave you, I should mention some attackers that are still very good, even though they might not be one of our top carries. The fact of the matter is many attackers are high-level carry Pokemon. Things like Cinderace, Greninja, Decidueye, they're all extremely good, especially when you have a ton of levels on them. All of the EVs are amazing. Sylveon, Glaceon, Espeon, all carry in their own right. And even though Glaceon got a few nerfs, let's face it, this Pokemon is still insane. And people are sleeping on Psyshock Espeon. It's still a great build for this Pokemon. But I'm going to hit you with one last attacker before we go, and that is Cramorant. Dive Air Slash Cramorant is consistently a top win rate build inside of Pokemon Unite, while at the same time being a very low pick rate. And I think that's because, first off, Cramorant may not be the most popular Pokemon. I don't know how many game covers it's been on, but I think probably less than Charizard. And at the same time, this build is actually pretty difficult to play. It takes a lot of figuring it out, but once you understand Dive Air Slash, you can really make some big plays happen. For items, I like running Slick Spoon, Energy Amplifier, and Buddy Barrier, or you could drop that Buddy Barrier for a Shell Bell to increase the amount of cooldown reduction and healing this Pokemon is able to attain. The emblem setup is definitely 6 green, 7 black. I like using it with a little extra move speed. You could also use it with 6 green, 7 black, 2 white if you want to put that Lugia emblem in there. I think something people can do to actually excel more with Cramorant is use its Unite move very aggressively. So if you're able to get some damage onto your enemies, you dive in, you hit them with a big boosted attack into an Air Slash or something like that, immediately pop your Unite move, and all of a sudden your enemies start to scatter and you pick up big KOs. Sometimes people use their Unite move a little too defensively with this Pokemon, or they use it in a situation where their health is already extremely low. I like using it more aggressively, and I think you'll pick up some big KOs with it. So there you have it, all of the best carry Pokemon for Season 12 of Pokemon Unite. Are there Pokemon I missed? Of course. There are so many amazing choices in the game right now as the roster keeps getting bigger and bigger, but I tried to give you the top win rate Pokemon with the best builds. Let me know what your favorite is in the comment. Let me know a Pokemon that you think I needed to bring up that I didn't. I love you all very much, and I hope this helps you on your journey through Master Rank. Bye, everybody. Yeehaw!